E ora invece facciamo un bilancio del 2025, di quanto accaduto, con la direttrice dell'Economist che parte dall'approccio di Trump nei confronti dell'Unione Europea. L'intervista è stata realizzata dalla nostra Mariangela Pira.
My first question would be, what do we think the approach is? Because it's a little, there is the new national security strategy, which, as you know, has a very negative tone about the European Union, about Europe. It talks about, civilizational threats in Europe. But it's not clear that that speaks for the whole of the administration. So I think part of the question is what is the Trump administration's attitude to Europe? But I think what is very clear is that we can no longer rely on the United States in the way that we once did. We need to spend more on our own defense. We need to do more to be economically vigorous and competitive in the 21st century. The world is changing, and we cannot roll back the clock to a different kind of world. And I think Europe, most of all, needs to realize that.
Is there a factor you think that could make Europe more united than it is today?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are. I think, for example, defense ought to be a factor that unites Europe. There is a real threat in the form of Russia to Europe. I think we are in the greatest peril than we have been for a long time. But I am worried that this will not unite Europe as much as it needs to. I think the combination of an inability to rely on the United States, the threat economically posed by China, and the threat geopolitically and militarily posed by Russia should all be wake-up calls to Europe. But unfortunately, I see, a Europe where there is growing populist nationalism in many countries, and those parties often think that Europe is the problem and not the solution. And I firmly agree that Europe needs reform. We talked about it. But I also think that Europe is more powerful as Europe and not as a collection of individual atomized states operating independently.
Yeah, I agree with you. The problem is that maybe the perception is that we seem to not know that it is like this, right?
I think, yeah, absolutely. And I think our problem is a little that we are like the frog in boiling water. It is happening gradually, and we don't realize how dangerous the situation is. I'm very struck, when I travel around the world, and I do a lot, how increasingly irrelevant Europe is in many parts of the world. People barely talk about Europe. If I go to the Gulf or if I go to Asia, or even Latin America, they just don't mention Europe that much. We're just not relevant. We're seen as a declining, stagnant, sclerotic, overregulated, nice place to go on holiday, nice place full of nice museums, but not a place where the future is being built. I mean, I really mean that. And it's obviously not entirely true. It's a caricature that is not accurate. But that is how many people around the world see us.
How do you see Italy under Meloni's government? As markets seem to appreciate this government, spreads of government bonds are going down, and they are touching on minimum in Italy. I think it's the minimum since like 2007, 2008.
So I think she's done extremely well. I think Europe Italy has some of the strongest leadership in Europe. There's been a lot of luck involved. A lot of money has come from the European Union to Italy, but she's an extremely skilled politician. She has held her coalition together. Many of the concerns about her that people were worried about have not happened. She's been fiscally prudent. But again, I think Italy probably needs more reform than it has seen so far. But look, there are very few places and very few political leaders around Europe where you think, gosh, this is great. And I think you're in a very good place with your leadership right now.